I would like to begin this video with a land acknowledgement. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron, Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Nothing I say is necessarily directly affiliated with the University of Toronto. I'm just using the land acknowledgement from my school. Thank you.
All right, so we have reached the final kind of question, which is kind of still like one of my favorite questions, just because it's basically a personal question, but it's in disguise. So these are the big questions or the quote questions. And so within these questions, it is still a personal question. And so how you can answer this question is by first interpreting whatever the quote is saying or whatever the big question is. And then you're going to basically be using a personal experience. The only difference is with this experience, I would go ahead and list three things that you want to cover within this question and how you're answering the question. So whether that is three ethical principles, three lessons you've learned, um, three pillars from the school. So whatever three things that you would like to list, I would take that opportunity and list them there before you talk about the experience. Finally, you're going to wrap it up and come back into talking about how this is going to apply to you as a doctor or the doctor that you're going to become. So you're going to talk about how you can apply this to medical school and how this is going to be important in medicine overall. So it's pretty easy. I think that they're basically personal questions in disguise. Sometimes they can be policy questions in disguise. So just figure out how you would like to answer the question, but I would just make sure to break down how you're going to answer the question in the very beginning. So let's go ahead and answer a sample question.
So pause the video, read the question, and take some time to answer it for yourself using the framework just discussed. Once you're done, come back to the video and see how I responded to the same question. In this situation, our answers should be pretty different just because there is a personal component to big questions, but you can still follow along to see how the structure compares to mine.
Wow, I absolutely love this example or this quote just because if I'm thinking about an orchestra, I'm thinking about so many different sounds and instruments coming together to create like this beautiful sound that you can't really even separate from each other. It just sounds so beautiful and unified. And that directly relates to medicine. But I could also talk about an experience where that I had that could also be related to. So recently, I had the great opportunity to run in not my first, but my second ultra marathon, my second ultra relay marathon from Toronto to Montreal. And in order to accomplish something grand like this, you have to work in a team that really is able to work together. And so, something that I think a great team is going to encompass is a leader, number one. Number two, you're going to need great communication. And number three, you're going to need some empathy. And I think that the team that I was on encompassed all these things. And that's why we were able to take on such a large task like running from Toronto to Montreal. So number one, we had a great leader, and this leader was able to make sure that everything was able to go to plan. They were able to create a plan to begin with and assign tasks to everybody based on their capabilities. This is just like a conductor in an orchestra. Yes, you're going to have a bunch of people that know how to play their instruments, but you're going to need somebody that guides everybody to be playing to the same tune. And so you're going to need a conductor, and that's the same way as needing a leader. So number two, you're going to need great communication. And so, if we think about all the instruments that are happening in an orchestra, if they weren't listening to each other, they might be playing at all different times, and it would just sound like a mess, even if they were all making beautiful music on their own. The same is true when it comes to communicating on a team. And this was definitely true in my Run to Montreal team. We were able to all communicate effectively with each other and hear each other out. But in order to create that environment, people need to trust each other. People need to feel comfortable voicing their opinions and how they feel. So the first thing that you need to do is to create that environment where people feel comfortable and feel respected voicing how they feel. Just because we did come across a couple situations where we all had to communicate and let each other know what the next plan of action was going to be. So communication is definitely important. Finally, you're going to need empathy. So you're going to need to not only hear each other, but really care for each other and take each other's perspective. And when you are able to do this, you're able to support each other effectively. So on our run to Montreal, there's definitely people, if you think about it, that's 650 kilometers. Injuries are going to happen. There's going to be emotional things that happen as well. So it's important for everybody to have empathy for each other in order for us to support each other. And we did that by, for instance, if we could see somebody was in pain, it meant that another runner might just go ahead and say, "Hey, I'm good to run for the next, 5 kilometers." Or so just being able to do that kind of thing is really important in order to work effectively in a team and create something beautiful. So if I'm thinking about how this relates to medicine, so I've also worked in a as a nurse, and I've been part of an orchestra in medicine, and I've seen how important it is for the doctor, the nurse, um, the pharmacist, the respiratory therapist to work in an acute situation in order to stabilize a patient. It really does look like an orchestra when you're there. Really, it does. But even in non acute situations in the community, when we're sending somebody out into the community, they are somebody who is dynamic, that is going to be consisting of not just their the physical disease that they're being treated for. There's going to be maybe social factors, there's going to be things within their house that we have to consider. So in all areas of medicine, we're working in some type of orchestra because we're working together in order to care for a single individual. So I absolutely love this question. And I hope I keep this type of analogy in my mind as I go into medicine and I collaborate with all the people within my teams. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for this question.
So that is how I would answer a quote question. I would love to hear about how you guys interpreted this question or this quote and how you answered the question. Of course, my answer is not going to be the same as yours, as I discussed, just because it's based on personal experiences. Also, as I stated before, you do not have to be an expert in the topic of the actual question. All you have to be an expert in is your own experiences. And that's what you're going to have to lean on in order to make yourself stand out. So you have to understand that these interviewers have been watching a whole bunch of of different interviewees. And so you want to make sure that you are standing out, and your experiences is how you do that. So I hope that this video was helpful for you, and I hope that you are able to return back and watch my video on logistics. So like, comment, and share with your friends if you know they're also preparing for med school interviews. See you later. Bye.